They say loneliness is dangerous. But what if it's not? What if being alone is the most powerful tool for discovering who you truly are? This video will challenge everything you believe about solitude. We'll explore the uncomfortable silence, the fear of being forgotten, and why so many people chase noise just to avoid their own reflection. But more importantly, we'll reveal why those who master solitude become unshakable. Stay till the end. You're about to meet a version of yourself you've never seen before. We spend our lives surrounded by noise. From early morning alarms to endless notifications, we rarely face a moment of true silence. But behind this noise lies a truth most people run from. They are terrified of being alone. Not just physically, but mentally. Because in solitude, there are no filters, no distractions, no validation. It's just you and your thoughts. And if you haven't trained your mind, this moment can feel like torture. That's why people cling to relationships that drain them, scroll endlessly through empty content, or stay busy just to avoid facing the silence. But here's the paradox. Until you can sit in silence and feel whole, you will always be dependent on the world to complete you. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." True solitude is not about isolation, it's about awakening. When you're alone, the mask slips. There's no one to impress, no role to play, just raw honesty. And that honesty is uncomfortable. You begin to see your fears, your doubts, your unresolved pain. But that's where the growth begins. Because the same solitude that reveals your wounds also holds the power to heal them. When you stop resisting the silence and start embracing it, something shifts. You become your own sanctuary. And no matter what storms rage outside, you remain grounded. Because your peace no longer depends on anyone else. Modern society glamorizes connection, but confuses quantity with depth. You can have hundreds of friends, thousands of followers, and still feel alone in a crowded room. Why? Because external connection means nothing without internal connection. And that's what solitude gives you, a bridge back to yourself. In the quiet, you hear what your soul has been whispering all along. You realize that much of what you chase, success, validation, relationships, is often rooted in fear, not purpose. Solitude strips away the noise and asks, who are you without the applause? Can you live with your own reflection? For most people, the answer is no. But for those who dare to stay in the silence, a deeper strength is born, the strength to live authentically. You don't have to retreat to a mountain cave to experience solitude. Sometimes it's just turning off your phone for an hour, sitting with your thoughts instead of escaping them, walking alone without headphones, letting your mind wander. These moments may feel small, but they are sacred. They train your mind to stop fearing stillness. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. Your thoughts slow down, your heart speaks louder, and you begin to see clearly. The world stops pulling you in 1,000 directions because you've anchored yourself. You don't need noise to feel alive. You don't need attention to feel worthy. You're no longer a slave to the crowd. You've found your own rhythm, and that's where freedom begins. There's a reason ancient philosophers, monks, and warriors all embraced solitude. It wasn't just for peace, it was for clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and stoic thinker, would rise early before the chaos of the day to be alone with his thoughts. Not because he had the luxury of time, but because he knew without inner strength, outer strength is meaningless. Solitude was his mirror, his forge, his compass. In a world full of distractions, he chose to turn inward. And so can you. Because the world is constantly trying to sell you versions of happiness. But the only one that lasts is the one you build from within, in the silence, in the discomfort, in the solitude. Solitude also teaches you boundaries. When you spend time alone, you become sensitive to what drains your energy and what nourishes it. You stop tolerating shallow conversations, fake smiles, and environments that suffocate your growth. You begin to protect your time like a warrior guards a sacred temple, because you've tasted peace, and now anything that threatens it feels like violence. This is not arrogance, it's self-respect. You no longer say yes out of fear or guilt. You choose who enters your space, who shares your energy. And in doing so, you create a life that reflects your values, not your insecurities. A life shaped by clarity, not chaos. Solitude also reveals your hidden gifts. In the noise of the world, it's easy to lose sight of what you truly love, what you're truly good at. But in the quiet, your natural talents rise to the surface. Maybe it's writing, painting, problem-solving, or deep listening. Whatever it is, you finally hear it calling. When no one's watching, when there's no pressure to perform, you begin to explore without fear. And through this exploration, passion is born. Not the kind that burns out after a week, but the kind that builds a life. Solitude gives you the room to dream, to try, to fail, and to rise, not for applause but for purpose. And yet, solitude is not always gentle, can be brutally honest. When you remove distractions, the truth shows up uninvited. You see the parts of yourself you've ignored, the insecurities you buried, the dreams you abandoned, the wounds you never healed. Can feel overwhelming. But here's the truth. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confrontation. And solitude gives you the courage to confront yourself, not to criticize, but to understand. You stop blaming others, stop running from your past. You take ownership. And with that ownership comes power. The power to rewrite your story. To be the author of your life, not just a character in someone else's plot. In solitude, time slows down. You begin to notice the details, the way sunlight hits the floor in the morning, the sound of your breath, the rhythm of your steps. These moments may seem ordinary, but they hold extraordinary power. They remind you that life isn't just about big wins or dramatic changes. It's about presence, about being here fully. And when you learn to be fully present with yourself, you no longer chase moments, you live them. You stop waiting for life to happen and start creating it, one breath at a time. This presence becomes your superpower in a world that's constantly rushing ahead. Many people fear solitude because they associate it with loneliness. But they are not the same. Loneliness is a hunger, solitude is a feast. Loneliness is a wound, solitude is a medicine. When you are lonely, you feel empty. When you are alone by choice, you feel whole. It's not about isolation. It's about integration. You're integrating all parts of yourself, your past, your flaws, your dreams, into one powerful being. And from this wholeness, you begin to attract different people, different opportunities. Not because you need them, but because you are complete without them. That's when relationships become healthy, when they're rooted in abundance, not desperation. Solitude also builds mental toughness. When you stop relying on constant approval or external motivation, you discover a deeper drive, one that doesn't fade when no one's watching. You wake up for yourself. You keep going when no one claps. This is where discipline is born, not in public challenges or accountability groups, but in the silent promises you make to yourself. The Stoics believed that the only true control we have is over our inner world. And solitude is where that control is trained. Day by day, you become less reactive, more deliberate. You no longer get pulled by every opinion, every trend. You move from noise to focus, from panic to power. In a world obsessed with connection, solitude becomes a radical act. It says, "I'm enough." While others scroll for validation, you sit with your thoughts. While others chase attention, you refine your character. You don't need to prove anything. Your stillness proves everything. This doesn't make you cold. In fact, solitude sharpens your empathy. Because when you understand yourself deeply, you understand others better. You speak less but say more. You listen more but judge less. And in this quiet strength, you become the kind of person people trust, respect, and remember. Not because you demanded attention, but because you didn't. Solitude is where your identity becomes yours again. You stop being the sum of other people's expectations. You start asking yourself, what do I believe? What do I want? And for the first time, your answers aren't filtered through fear or influence. You return to the raw essence of who you are. This isn't always pretty. Sometimes you discover weakness, contradictions, even shame, but it's real. And what's real can be refined. You shed the false labels, the roles you played just to fit in. And from that shedding, authenticity is born. Not the kind you post online, the kind you feel in your chest when you wake up knowing you're finally living on your terms. Solitude also teaches you to enjoy your own company. At first, silence can feel awkward, even scary, but over time it becomes a friend. You laugh to yourself, you reflect, you plan, you even forgive yourself out loud. The conversations you have in solitude, the internal ones, begin to sound less like criticism and more like coaching. You become your own guide, your own cheerleader, your own therapist. This inner dialogue strengthens your self-worth. Because when you treat yourself with respect in private, no one can disrespect you in public. You carry yourself differently, and that quiet confidence changes how the world responds to you. In solitude, you also discover your true pace. You stop running someone else's race. You no longer compare your timeline with theirs, you build your own. The noise fades, and your intuition speaks louder. You realize that slow growth is still growth, that rest is part of the process, and that you don't need to hustle for every result. This clarity helps you make better decisions, not reactive ones based on trends or pressure, but intentional choices aligned with your path. And because you're not in a rush to impress anyone, you begin to build things that last. Purpose replaces panic. Vision replaces comparison. Solitude is not the absence of life, it's the foundation of it. Every artist, leader, philosopher, and inventor spent seasons in solitude. Why? Because creation requires clarity, and clarity is born in silence. Whether you're building a business, healing from pain, or just figuring out who you are, solitude gives you space to breathe and create. It's where you draft your next chapter without interference. And when you return to the world, you return with something real, something tested, something yours. You stop echoing others, you become your own voice. And that voice has weight, because it's forged, not borrowed. Solitude also purifies your relationships. When you're no longer afraid of being alone, you stop clinging to people out of fear. You choose connections based on value, not desperation. You become harder to manipulate, harder to use because your peace isn't negotiable. You don't chase anyone. You attract those who align. And because you've faced yourself in silence, you show up more grounded in every conversation. You don't need to prove yourself, beg to be seen, or hide your truth. People can feel that. And those who aren't ready for your presence naturally fall away. Not because you push them, but because your energy speaks the truth they're not ready for. The irony is this: the more time you spend alone, the better you function with others. You learn boundaries. You learn patience. You learn what deserves your energy and what drains it. This clarity makes you a better leader, a better partner, a better friend. You're no longer running on fumes. You enter relationships full, not empty. And that shift changes everything. Because people don't need more noise, they need presence. People don't need another performer, they need someone real. Someone who's faced the mirror and still chosen to grow. Solitude gives you that gift. It strips away the masks, and what remains is gold. And finally, solitude becomes your sanctuary. Not a punishment, but a privilege. A sacred space where no one's opinion matters but your own. A space where ideas are born, where pain is healed, where strength is rebuilt. It's where you realize that the world doesn't define you, you define you. And once you taste that freedom, you can never go back to needing constant validation. You become calm in the storm, centered in the chaos, because you've met yourself in the silence and you didn't flinch. That moment, that recognition, is the beginning of a different life. A life of depth, of purpose, of sovereignty. So if you find yourself alone right now, embrace it. Don't run. Don't numb. Don't beg to be rescued. Use it. Use it to write, to train, to plan, to breathe. Let it refine you. Let it strip away the distractions and rebuild your inner world. Because the truth is this: being alone isn't empty. It's full of potential. And those who understand this walk through life with a quiet power. They aren't loud. They aren't desperate. But when they speak, people listen. Because solitude has sharpened their soul. And now they lead, not follow. If you've ever feared solitude, maybe it's because you've never truly met yourself there. But that's where your strength lives. That's where your clarity begins. If this message resonated with you, like this video, drop a comment with your story, and subscribe for more content like this. Let's grow together from the inside out.